Welcome back. This is Stephanie Stock with Ohio Advocates for Medical Freedom. We're moving into part 2 with our interview series with attorney Kevin Berry. He's the author of the book Vaccine Whistleblower, parent of a vaccine-injured child, and the current president of First Freedoms. First Freedoms is a nonprofit organization formed to address the right of freedom of health choice, religious freedom, and other freedoms guaranteed by the First Amendment of the Constitution. Today, we're going to talk a little bit more about the HH rule and how legal precedent might impact it. You highlighted a section of the proposal rule on protecting statutory conscience rights in healthcare that says, in part, you have the right to decline to participate in, refer for, undergo, pay for certain healthcare related treatments, research, or services, such as abortion or assisted suicide, among others, which violate your conscious, religious beliefs, or moral convictions under federal law. Although this appears to be for the providers of services, the whole rule covers patients as well. Can you tell us what this means for healthcare providers?
Yeah, I think that is a great section for health choice freedom. And the two key words in there for healthcare workers are participate in. So like usually the focus is from like the pro-life people is don't force people who are vehemently religiously opposed to abortion. Don't force them to participate in anything that's a procedure that is related to that, right? So that they don't have to do the work, right? But if they also don't have to participate in like a policy of flu shots, if you don't have to participate in that policy, that's important. That's very important. So I think that's those two words bring in every healthcare worker in the country.
Great. Do you think it will have any meaning for patients and guardians of minor patients?
It's a tough one because there is nothing in the proposed rules that talks about children. Or I shouldn't say nothing. There's very little. One of the things, if you dig way deep into it, it talks about like children in who are runaways who are brought to like foster care. And again, I think most of these regs are meant to be about abortion. But like you can't force a runaway 16-year-old into a procedure that's against their religious belief, right?
Right.
But if you want to extrapolate into the vaccine issue again, which for schools and for minors, like why would a 16-year-old runaway have a right to a religious freedom, but a 16-year-old living at home doesn't? So
right. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's one of the few places that the proposed HHS rules touch on minors, but
Okay.
because I think it's mainly aimed at adults.
Okay.
Yeah, and just one other thing on that,
Yes.
during the comment period, when you do a word search of the final document, the first word you should look for is participate. Google, like, do the word search for participate in, because pharma is working really hard to erase those two words. Pharma's comments, please erase participate in. So again, it's only two words, but make sure they're in the final rule.
Yes, yeah. Does it extend to providers of all types of services that might be covered under or funded under HHS?
I believe so. Yeah, it's very, very broad. And just let me throw one other thing, because I have my copy of Vaccine Whistleblower here too. And
surprise, surprise. You know the author pretty well.
In the very beginning, before we even get into the book, we have the bioethics standard in there. And so when in reading the HHS rules, it's my eyes were popping out of my head. I'm like, wow, they're actually doing international bioethics standards, and it was shocking to see the federal government do that, but it shouldn't be, right? It shouldn't be shocking that all they're doing is repeating the human rights and bioethics standard, right? And here's what it is. Any preventative, which is a vaccine, any preventative diagnostic and therapeutic medical intervention is only to be carried out with the prior free and informed consent of the person concerned based on adequate information. The consent should, where appropriate, be express and may be withdrawn by the person concerned at any time and for any reason without disadvantage or prejudice. Really simple. The HHS proposed rules mirroring that, right? A preventative procedure can be withdrawn by the person, religious exemption, religious reasons, for any reason, but it's religious reasons is one reason, without disadvantage or prejudice. Don't fire me.
Right.
So it's all, they're echoing the international standard on bioethics. But pharma has and the public health have so skewed the debate that it's shocking to see human rights standards and bioethics show up in federal documents, because they've totally skewed the debates.
Yeah. One of the parts states, similarly, although Congress granted HHS authority to conduct research, experiments, and demonstrations related to occupational illness in the Occupational Safety and Health Act of 1970, such authority did not include the power to require, quote, medical examination, immunization, or treatment for those who object thereto on religious grounds, except where such is necessary for the protection or health or safety of others. There seems to always be some sort of mass fear campaign going on, like we're seeing with influenza right now. Do you see this as a protect the herd loophole that people in authority could exploit in order to mandate vaccination?
Sure, and that they'll always put in loopholes like that. And for all the good work we do about vaccine rights, every time we get close to a breakthrough, somebody's going to scream Ebola, right? So,
Yes.
so it's expect it to come soon, right? The Farmers Public Comment period just might be 1,000 pages. It says Ebola, right? It'll be like Jack Nicholson, all work and no play. It'll be like The Shining. Farmers just say Ebola, right? So it's
don't forget some nice bleeding out of the eyes footage and stuff to go along with that.
Right. So, yeah. But they use fear as a motivator, there are always going to be loopholes like that, because God forbid there ever is some real infectious disease that is a problem. Like public policy people can't ignore that remote possibility, right? It hasn't happened in clean water, sanitation, the whole developed world. Eat well, refrigerate your foods, generally take care of yourself is a pretty good way to stay healthy.
Yeah.
But you're never going to have a pure public policy. I don't think you'll ever have one without an escape hatch like that, because what if it really ever does happen?
Right. On a related note, Jacobson versus Massachusetts from 1905 is frequently cited as a precedent for police enforced mandatory vaccination powers of states. Is it true that the case viewed individual freedom to the common welfare? And how does this really impact the new HHS division and role?
Yeah, I think that it is the key, because Jacobson, and this is something that we've discussed before, you and I, that I think a lot of advocates on our side don't understand that this is the current precedent. This is the current federal precedent, and it's old. It's 150.
Current from 1905, right? That's as current as we can get.
Right, but it just says states can do it. That the states have the power under police power. That they can't do it arbitrarily. That they have to do panels of experts, like departments of health, but that has been what is carrying the day, and it's still the federal legal precedent. So when people say that the First Amendment talks about religious freedom, yes, but your state law, your state exemption is what you have to lean on. Like the federal government's not coming to the rescue on this issue, right? And the First Amendment is a concept, it's a principle, but it's not absolute. And the best example that is frequently cited is, you have free speech, but you can't yell fire in a crowded theater, right?
Right.
So there are restrictions on liberty, so they're not absolute. So our argument as when we're approaching policymakers is just that this is a bad idea. You have to have mandates are a bad idea. Like if you're going to violate human rights, you better make sure the safety is as locked down as you can. If you're going to violate religious freedom, make sure the safety is as locked down as you can. If you're going to violate civil rights, make sure the safety is as locked down as you can. And they're not locking down the safety. And then there also is the obvious admission that all you hear when vaccines are being marketed is vaccines save lives. They have a 3-word slogan. It says vaccines save lives, but why do they have liability protection? It's because as a product, they are considered unavoidably unsafe. Yeah. So how is the same thing safe and effective and unavoidably unsafe, right? And a lot of that is economic. When the money is coming in, it's safe and effective. And if you get injured by it, it's like, did we say safe and effective? We meant unavoidably unsafe. You must have
Right.
misunderstood, right? So
Yeah.
they've been, that's why I'm saying that I think that HHS, it's like they're tiptoeing into an adult conversation, the new HHS regs. Like that the federal government is talking about vaccination in a context of just not that they're magically good, that there are other issues around vaccination other than you do what you're told, is a positive development.
Yeah, it certainly is.
Yes, but again, let me get back to Jacobson for a sec, because
Yeah.
Jacobson, 1905. I think I was reading one time a stat that in 1920, 1% of the American public had running water. Right? It was a different world. It was
Yeah, a
a
little
different
bit.
in sanitation. It was a different world. Like people were living in their own filth, right? They were living. It was outhouses. It was piss pots. It was it was not the same world we live in. So, and I also think not the same world in ways that the Supreme Court in 1905 could not have imagined. So, like in 1905, when they're talking about it's a reasonable thing if they get a panel of experts together who make a recommendation regarding things like vaccination. I don't think they could have anticipated how big pharma is, how big pharma
Oh,
is in 2018, how much influence they have on things like the AAP. Like that, you're not getting you're not getting a straight answer from AAP. You're not getting a straight answer from the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices. Those are industry people talking about industry, not about health. Like if health happens, it's an accident, right? Yeah,
sadly,
right.
yeah.
Well,
Yeah, it's a very
it's an accident. It's an unintended side effect. Yeah,
one that actually would be beneficial.
right, right.
The Supreme Court ruled the state may be justified in restricting individual liberty under the pressure of great danger to of the safety of the general public. Could they apply this to influenza, pertussis, mumps, or other infectious outbreaks? I'm sure they would love to.
Sure. I mean, yeah. That's the danger. Yeah, and the theme is always going to be the same. It is, if you're going to intrude on individual rights and critical freedoms, you have to have a good reason. And to me, like a big issue with this is when there's the amount of quote unquote science on the mainstream side of this issue is always going to be 10 times higher than the quote unquote alternative side, always, right? So when there's a dispute on something like this, you fall back on your principles. What are your principles? And the United Nations got 193 countries together in 2005, not 1905. Jacobson's 1905. 2005, the standard is informed consent can be withdrawn at any time for any reason without disadvantage or prejudice. So when states when U.S. states and countries are violating that principle, I don't think policymakers are hearing that from us. I think when we go into policymakers, when our advocates go into policymakers and talk about vaccine dangers, that's part of the information that goes into informed consent.
Yeah.
But if it's going to be a stalemate, if it's the medical community says all these panels say take the vaccine, this other science that you find persuasive says don't take the vaccine. What happens when there's a stalemate? Then you fall back on your principles, and an informed consent is the principle. So that's the right. I think fighting on rights is where we can win this battle more so than arguing science, because we can argue science forever, and they'll
Yeah.
have a bigger stack of documents and every medical board on their side. And if we agree that if we believe that the other science is more persuasive, we should be able to do that under the principles.
Yeah, absolutely. Ohio state law requires the exclusion of unvaccinated kids from school during an epidemic. We're seeing schools now arbitrarily decide that one case of chickenpox is an epidemic. Is there any precedent on how epidemics are defined in these kinds of cases?
No, not that I know of. And you know, it gets misused all the time. You know, it gets and the press eats it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Thompson talks about that with Brian Hooker. You know how the CDC scientist Bill Thompson, who's in the Vaccine Whistleblower book,
Yeah.
he was telling Brian how the media loves to hype scares like what happened in Disneyland. And you know, 130 cases I think in Disneyland, not one transferred in a school, not one death, and 39 million people in California had their rights taken away by SB 277. So they fan the flames, they scare people, and they use that to influence policymakers. And I don't think the policymakers know what the human rights standards are. And I know that because I've been to in a lot of the policymaker meetings in DC and many state capitals, including yours. And
Hmm.
you know, you show them the human rights standard, and people are, oh, really? Really? What? You know, like nobody told me that. No, it's not in your pharma, it's not in your lobbyist packet, right? Because they don't want you to know it. They don't want you to know it, right?
Merck didn't tell you that at your lunch date, surprisingly.
No, that's right. You know, and that's, well, you teed me up for one thing I wanted to discuss at First Freedoms. You know, like we on Christmas last year, you know, the Italy passed a law last year requiring
Okay.
vaccines to go to school, and I was following that from afar. And so I filed on behalf of First Freedoms and as an individual a human rights complaint about the country of Israel, Italy, the Republic of Italy. So that's pending. There's a board in Paris. Theoretically, the way that would play out, and I haven't heard back from them directly yet from the board because I don't think they know what they've got. You know, I don't think anyone's tried this before. Where I'm saying, like, anyone who sees a human rights violation is allowed to alert this board. Like I'm seeing tens of thousands of people in Italy. From New York, I'm seeing that this is happening in Italy, and I'm calling out Italy to this board in France, and theoretically, they're going to bring Italy and me together and see if we can mediate it, right? And when I hear more from them, I'll try to get more people to send in complaints because anyone can send in complaints. But it's on the First Freedoms website. It's firstfreedoms.org. And Italy, I did Italy first because it's a country. You know, I'm going to file a complaint against the United States also on behalf of California. That's a tougher one because it's not the entire country. It's one segment. It's a partition, a state of a country.
Hmm.
But it's a lot of people. It's the 39 million people in California. Like 1/8 of Americans are Californians. When they took down Italy, it's 60 million people. When I say they took down Italy, I'm saying pharma lobbyists
Yeah.
influenced policymakers to make bad public policy. Right? That's my view. Where public policy, what I would love Italy to do, right? If I ever get this dream meeting with the Italian health people, is just say, we're aware that we're violating the bioethics standards of the entire world and all of our citizens' human rights, and we want this law anyway. Even though we know we're doing that, we still like this law, right?
Yeah.
And France has one. I'm going to go. France will be the third country I filed a complaint against, but France's mandate hasn't taken place yet, so there wouldn't be an aggrieved party yet. Italy has people who've already lost their rights. So, and Italy also has a court hearing that they had an appeals court who told people that the law was upheld. So you have to wait for the country's judicial process to play out before appealing to the UN. So that's why Italy's first. U.S. will probably be second, but it might get shut down because it's California's not a country, even though California wants to be.
They do.
Some Californians, and then France. As soon as France goes into effect, I'll do France. And if nothing else, I hope the project, the complaint project, opens eyes of policymakers to what their standards are. Right? When you're taking away these people's rights, they don't understand that they're doing it. They think that there's nothing on the other side, and they're wrong.
Yeah, that's for sure. Um, Some people in groups have been very concerned that HR 322, that bill sponsored by Congressman Joe Kennedy in Massachusetts, would have a negative impact on the conscience and religious freedom developments. Do you think that's true? And if so, what would be the best way to combat that?
It could. And we're a minority. The people who vaccinate differently are a minority, and
You don't say.
minorities in our system get rights.
Yeah.
You don't get legislation, right? So to me, I think that's almost a campaign ad, and it's well, to say campaign aid. It's a request for donors, right? That bill. Look, I signed on to this, now come to my fundraiser. I don't know a lot about that. As far as I know, it's not getting traction anywhere. I don't think there's a companion Senate bill. I'm not sure why he's doing that, and yeah, I don't know.
Maybe for campaign, I don't know, points, browning points, maybe.
It could be, but I know his some, and obviously, his uncle is a friend of mine, so I don't want to, I don't know what he's thinking, but I know that a cousin of the Congressman Joe Kennedy's is he has an organization that's against marijuana legalization, which is a pro pharma position. So it's a little murky. It's a little murky what's going on there, but Congressman Kennedy might need some education on bioethics standards too.
Sounds like he probably will. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you see any limitations or negatives regarding the new division in the proposed rule? Anything on the negative side?
Not yet. Let's wait and see what the proposed rules like. If participate in comes out, that'd be bad. If someone listens to the, I don't know how many. It'll probably be 20 people on our side listen to this, and 500 farmer reps.
Probably.
Yeah, the farmer lobbyists are taking notes, right? But so if you see like participate in come out, if you see the reference to the runaways come out, which is the only reference I saw in there, or one of the few references I saw to minors. If you see those kind of things come out, you'll know that they're trying to guard against this type of rule spilling over into the schools.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anything else we haven't covered that maybe you'd like to mention before we close?
Not really. Just any help people could give towards first freedoms would be helpful. Because if I have to go to France for these hearings, I'd have to drop everything else, right? And that all costs dollars and cents. But other than that, I think
you don't have a magical unicorn to fly you to France, Kevin.
I don't, and I don't have a farmer sponsor. No, but on the no, and it's well, if this thing catches fire, right? If they even hear it, if there's even a hearing about whether or not Italy violated the human rights of its citizens, right? That would be enormous, right? That would be enormous in stopping other countries from doing it. It's like, wait, what? And I'm a, as you know, I'm a representative of the United Nations. So I've talked with other I've talked with health ministers in the hallway about this. I attended both the Republican convention and Democratic convention in 2016, and at the Democratic convention, I was asking people, who decides on the vaccine question, the state or parents, and I heard from almost everybody that at the Democratic convention was saying the state decides, not the parents. And I would show them the human rights standards. I'd had like 100 of them printed. That was like my mission there. And they would be like, "Oh, we don't care what the human rights standards the state decides," which goes chilling to me. On the Republican side, I would say we had about 75% with us. I'm saying the parents decide, but about 25% of the Republican people I talked to there were not willing to do it either. So another reason I went there, I went by myself to both of them on a solo mission, and there were a lot of media crews there. This media crews with downtime, I had all this information packet that I'm handing out to them, and no one would interview me. No one would they were all like, "Oh, can I keep this? I want to give this to my sister's pregnant. I want her to see it." I'm like, "Yeah, how about let's talk to you. Why don't you pick up that camera? I'll talk to your sister through the satellite. We can talk about it, right?"
Yeah.
And they're like, "No, my news director would never go for it." So they all it has been such a verboten subject. You're not allowed to talk. You're not allowed to talk about both sides of the vaccine debate, right?
Yeah.
You're not allowed to do that in media, and it's down to these people weren't even calling their news directors. The crews in the field were censoring themselves. I was like, why don't you call your news director, see if they'll do it? And it's like, I know they won't. And these people, they're just people like everyone else. They have nice jobs, and they don't want to threaten their job. If they cover this story, they're going to get yelled at by their news director, and they're not going to put their own jobs at risk. So hopefully, if this administration keeps going in this direction and respects religious freedom, and these rules go through, then hopefully a next step would expand it to the schools, and then perhaps an adult conversation can be had on the subject.
Yeah, well, that would be amazing. We can definitely be hopeful for that. If somebody does want to donate to First Freedom, so just send them to your website.
Yeah, it's through the website. There's a PayPal link on the website, and I know you were very helpful in setting up the GoFundMe. So, but the website's the most direct, and there's a GoFundMe link too.
Okay.
But thank you.
Great. Well, Kevin, thank you so much. I know you took some time out of your day to shed some light on these new developments with HHS, so we appreciate that. And we definitely appreciate the work you're doing with First Freedoms, your advocacy in the vaccine-injured community, and frequently assisting OAMF by consulting us on our legislative action projects. So thank you for that. We look forward to speaking to you again in the near future. And for those that are listening, OAMF will continue to bring you interviews on vaccine and health-related topics that affect our state and the nation. So please stay connected with us on Facebook, Twitter, and at ohioamf.org. And we'll see you again soon. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, Evan. Next time I'm going to get fresh cut flowers.
Thank you, Kevin.
All right.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right, bye.